Hey, and a good day, and how your mom and them. A more civilized edition of Far Reach is what we call FRX, or Far Reaches Extra. And as you might notice by the name on the screen, our guest today is Mr. Randy Bracher of Pendleton, Oregon. Randy, thanks for joining us. How's things going out there in Pendleton?
Things are good. We're warming up this week. Got a little chilly last weekend, but no, things are beautiful.
Outstanding. For those of you who don't know both of us at the same time, Randy and I met in college way back in the day, and it doesn't seem like it was that long ago until you get like an alumni email or something like that. And you start doing the math, and you're like, "Crap, that was a long time
10
ago."
years ago.
Yeah, exactly. It seems like yesterday sometimes, but people have kids that are doing stuff like grown-ups do now. We went to college together. Like, what the hell's going on with that? So we've known each other a long time. We don't get to talk near often as we want to or should, and that's one of the things that kind of brought Far Reaches, the full podcast, together for that exact thing. Is like we don't get to talk near enough, and we have a lot of people we don't get to catch up with, and so been pestering Randy for a while now to like get our schedules matched up. And you've got about 9 day jobs, and so it's been fun to get that all dialed in. And actually, when we were talking, we talked just real early, briefly today. You were headed to check some cows. How are the calves looking?
Calves are big. Even though it's been really, really dry in eastern Oregon for the most part, the upper mountain grass, usually it gets a little bit thin. This year we've got lots of grass. We got a few shots of summer rain that hit us up higher that didn't get us down in the valley. It didn't get bloody hot early. And so we've got some good, healthy calves. I'm guessing we weaned calves. I'm going to weigh them this weekend. We weaned 2 weeks ago, which was about a month late, but just because I had so much stuff going on. They're basically self-weaned now. We're February 1st of March calvers, and they're weighing, we weighed 4 calves just because I jumped them on the trailer with some horses, and they were all steers, weighed 762. So I think that I'm hoping to hit that mark, and that'll be pretty good for us.
Outstanding. Yeah. That's good here. I'm always curious how different regions are doing. And that's one of our focuses on Far Reaches too, is just like ag education at times, because some of our listeners don't know much about ag. And so it's good to get that out. You guys, do you raise anything else besides cows?
Yeah, we're a pretty diversified ag operation, irrigated dry land, raise about 3,500 acres of dry land wheat annually. We're just adding on to our irrigation program. We developed some irrigation, 15 circles in 2012. Wow. We're adding 18 circles this year. Water will fire up hopefully 1st of March. We tried to cram it in for this year, but just with permits, COVID, all that kind of stuff. We have the towers up. We just got some electrical to finish up, but the pipeline's in. Kind of a unique opportunity to get some Port Umatilla industrial water transferred into some ag beneficial use water. So we're pretty excited about that to add on to, raising 40, 50 bushel wheat just doesn't pay the bills anymore. So we're turning some of our dryland ground into some irrigated ground and raising primarily grass seed, perennial ryegrass, tall fescue, some seed corn. We actually harvested some bloody butcher corn yesterday for the distillery, OGG, and Pendleton.
Really?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Raising some alfalfa, field corn, spuds, just kind of anything. We dabbled in the pear orchard business for a few years. We just sold our pear orchard down in Hood River.
Okay. Yeah.
We bought it in 2011, and it was just something fun to be in. Just kind of, diversification was the big part of it, and a place to, reinvest and talk about an eye-opening experience. Managing, you understand the labor profile in the United States and what a lot of industries are facing. So it was a great business to be in. I'm excited to be out of it, but I will never forget. And the best thing that came out of it was all the friendships and all that camaraderie that you make. I won't deny the fact that going down to Hood River, there was a lot of people when we bought that orchard, which we didn't realize was one of the bigger orchards down there. When you're coming from a dryland wheat operation and you think that, the median dryland farms roughly 2,500 acres, 2,500 to 3,000 acres. And we thought, we'll go down there and play in this sandbox for a while. And there was a bunch of guys thinking, well, these are just some high dollar investors that are coming down here just to make a bunch of money. And then once they realize they're just dryland wheat farmers, and we'd take the same equipment and broke down equipment and work on it every winter, and we'd get greasy and dirty with them. They're like, these guys are normal. So it turned into some awesome friendships that'll last for a lifetime. And so we, when we sold out of that this summer, and then reinvested into this irrigation project that we're putting on.
Oh, outstanding. Yeah, it would have to be interesting to basically learn a completely new, marketing and management. And plus it's a couple hours away from the home place, which adds to all that fun also. So were you guys staying down there for a few days at a time, or was it just a lot of back and forth?
Actually, we had a cousin that was managing it that had a small orchard down there, and then he managed the big orchard for us. And then he was getting of age that he wanted to retire, and so it was kind of an opportunity that we didn't want to lose any touch and management by subleasing to somebody else. So the market was still pretty good down there, so we divested out of that and reinvested back up here. But the interesting part with the whole stone fruit business, apples and pears and stuff, we raised 9 different varieties of pears. But it's not like wheat and corn and all that kind of stuff or cattle, where you take your cattle to the market and by law you get your check back in 48 hours.
Yeah.
You sell your fruit in October, you get your first check in March. Your first check.
Really?
Son of a biscuit. Yeah. You're hoping to get because it goes into a co-op pool, you're hoping to get your last year's check the following September. So you're still trying to scramble and get budgets done for the next year, and you haven't got paid completely for the year prior. So it got a little bit stressful, and my brother, who does most of the finances for the ranch, did a phenomenal job getting all that stuff organized. And we're a 5th generation farm, and it was quite an experience.
How would you compare the inputs per, acre on that as opposed to anything else you've jumped into?
It makes raising potatoes look like a drop in the bucket.
Wow. Yeah, that was my guess too. Is just so many different things that are going on to make that, and then worried about frost and things like that too. Of course, Hood River's a pretty good place, but still.
Frost. The labor input's huge. Training and keeping your labor pool. So we had some housing down there that we built just to keep a designated labor pool there of how you cut trees back and all that kind of stuff, how you pick fruit, how you handle fruit. Really the thing that, probably in this era means more than anything to me that we've always stood very proud of is treating people with respect, no matter if they're employees or their next door neighbors. And there's some people that have a tendency to treat migrant labor as disposable.
Yeah.
And we would go down there and take them. We had kids that get dropped off at Hood River School District. They'd get dropped off in the orchard. Some of the orchards, it was a huge no-no. We'd go down there, and my dad specifically would go down there, and he'd jump off the forklift or off the tractor, and they'd go play badminton or volleyball or basketball or whatever it was in the orchard, just having fun.
Yeah.
But the employees loved it. That was the best part about it. We'd take them Dairy Queen ice cream cones or
it's like family.
Boxes of Gatorade. Yeah, and just treat them like family. And when we did that for the next week, pretty soon our labor pool went from 60 pickers to 150 pickers.
Yeah.
Just because they were like, wow, these people actually are proud of what we do.
Yeah.
This is a place to be. So it was a good problem to have. But then on the flip side, it pisses off all your neighbors because they're not getting there.
Nobody's showing up to go there. Yeah, like, hey, man, simple problem to fix. Just be decent. That's all. Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
That's.
We'd have barbecues. I mean, we just had, you just treat them like they're your next door neighbor and your friends, and they're just, granted you're paying them for a job, but pretty soon you knew when their birthdays were, you knew which grade their kids were in. No, it was a phenomenal
Oh,
experience.
that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we were in a unique opportunity with raising a lot of grass seed where we could kind of target a labor pool where they'd come up and help us hoe noxious weeds or off grasses out of the fields and then run them down to the orchard. They'd help us thin. Then they'd come back up here, help us pull rye or something like that out of dryland wheat. Then they'd go back there and start picking. So
cool.
It was a great transition, a great trade.
Everybody won on that for sure. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yep, for sure.
When you mentioned 40 bushel wheat, I think it was you or your brother. I can't remember which guy. It was in college. You guys had coffee bug. It was like a record-breaking bushels, and it was like, I don't remember what it was. It was like
84.6.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, we had like 152 where I worked at Milton. You're like, shut up, man. You know, my relatives stopped here for some damn reason, so we're making the best of it. But I'll never forget that. I was in the Ag Lounge. It was so cool. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
And then that's, you know, I think something I wanted to touch on it specifically too was just our time at Eastern, and I think we had a pretty unique group when we all plowed through that place, and some of the people we got to meet and be friends with and just learn from each other. I think that's one of the greatest things I found about being at Eastern was just the group of maniacs that we rolled through there with, and the awesome teachers that really became friends and mentors. And, you know, and something will be clicking in my head. I'm like, freaking Andy said this, or Gary said that, or, you know, Penny or Arthur J. Greer. Like, how can you not remember Arthur J. Greer, you know?
I got my first barbecue from Art, and the bottom was rusted out, and I put a new bottom in it, and I still have it today. It's up at the cabin. But, you know, most of the birds and the bees talks come from Andy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
If you want to learn how to grow pasture grass, CRP, or manage rangeland, Kim Nick was the one that you go to. I mean,
Dr. Dirt, yeah.
Yeah, Dr. Dirt there wasn't any, it was straight up education. There wasn't any black or white to it.
No,
this is what you do.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is how you do.
That when the Ag Lounge was over, when we went to college, it was a different building than it is now. You know, you had a little couple tables, and you had Gary, Penny, and Andy. And I always remember our conversations. They started getting a little ruckus, and Gary'd get up and shut his door. And we'd keep rolling, and the conversations and the topics would get worse, and then Penny'd shut her door. And every once in a while, we'd get to the point where even Andy would come out and be like, gee, you guys got to calm it down a little bit, and close his door. And we'd know we'd gone too far when Andy would close his door, because it was just getting way out of control. Yeah.
When he come out with that bearded smile and tears were running down his eyes because he was laughing, and he knew, if I had to repeat this, I'm going to go to jail.
The tears. Yes. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember Arthur J. talking about the sandhills of Nebraska at an avalanche training. Remember that? And nobody batted an eye. And we were just like, he was talking about Nebraska sandhills at avalanche training, and nobody just kept on rolling with it. It was like one of my favorite stories. He just works it right in, man. Yeah.
Yeah. Anything about the sandhills. That and Montfort feedlot.
Oh, yeah. That's right. Yes. Just don't make any sense, like taking a bath with your boots on, people. Yeah. You know, it's just, at the time you don't realize how lucky we did to some degree, just how lucky you are to have those experiences, those teachers. You know, some of them, like poor Tim Del Curto, I just tortured constantly. It was, I think it was beef production I had with him. And he hates chickens, like despises them. He's like, they're the cause of the Middle East peace crisis, is chickens. And so before every class, I would make an overhead. That's how long ago this was, a chicken joke on an overhead and put it on his projector. And Sherry, the office gal, she would help me and loved it, you know. So it was like, oh, what's the joke today? Yeah. And so poor Tim, he flip it on and like, damn it, Wells.
I think, you know, one of the things that going back to college, and the group that I still keep in touch with, which isn't the whole group, but, you know, like we were talking earlier, getting reintroduced to Amy McNamee, but you and Marty Campbell and some of those, is what we had not only was it a good friendship, but we had passion. And so when you look around on social media, which I'm not a great social media guru, but when you look around and you just look at their profile, they're successful. But everybody that we went to college with had passion about the industry, and they've gone on to do things that are passionate about the industry. And not saying that that's just localized to EOU, but I think that it's missing by talking to some kids that are now going to college up there.
Mm-hmm.
And Paul and I talked about the stories of going to college up there, and we're like, man, that is totally different than what we went to college with.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were always getting tangled up in something, be it good or bad, or like, one year I remember we went down to sign up for the Ag and Timber Days parade. That was like me and Molly Fox at the time, or Con now, and several other ones. We rolled down there. We're like, we need to sign up for the Ag and Timber Days parade. And they're like, oh, we're not having it this year. Why not? Nobody wants to kind of organize it. We look at each other. We're like, we'll do it. So next thing you know, Ag and Timber Days parade, biggest parade they ever had. And it's not because of me and Molly, it's because we all jumped in and went and did it. And Ag dinner dance to raise money with. I think that's still going on. It was the last time I knew. The first one we had of that, we just tore the roof off that place with that thing.
Oh man.
I mean, it was insane. And so, I think a lot of it is ag kids in general, I think to a degree have that sort of, let's just go get it done attitude. Or like, that's not right. Or that's wrong. They tried to change the mascot at one time to something like I think it was like a peacock or some weird thing. And we're like, hey, technically we're not even Eastern students. We get an OSU degree, but you guys need to know about this. And so we went to Ralph Lewis's class, like one of the bigger ones, and we told everybody about it. Like, they're trying to change the mascot from the Mountaineer to this stupid thing. You should know about it. And everybody's like, what the hell? So it was just, and I think we kind of fed off each other too of what all the things we were dialed up in.
Yeah, and it wasn't just the cool part that I appreciated about the ag department. It wasn't the ag department that was just a sector of friends. You got to know the biology.
Absolutely.
And, I mean, all different departments, the nursing, all the different people, whether they were in music or whatever it was, became part of the circle, or we became part of their circle. We don't know who it became a circle of, but we had fun and we could get along, and it didn't matter, this might be getting a little bit political, but my mom says the other day, I didn't know that you were gay, black, white, Mexican, any race at all until you pointed out to me. And back in those days, we didn't care.
Could care less. Is that a cool person?
We just when you lived in that, I think it was a 2-story or maybe a 3-story house on
the White House. Yeah.
The White House. And you had that, whatever you call those coolers that you just pour everything in there. And there was Samoans, everything. Yeah. That was the greatest interaction of diversity, but it doesn't matter where you're from because everybody there was friends when you walked in the door. And when you left, you were friends, and you couldn't wait to see them the next day and say,
it took an hour to walk across campus because it was like, hey, we're just talking and having, it was like such a great family. I really didn't want to leave college. That was just too much fun and great people. And you're exactly right. It's just cool people. And I think we all carried that away too, though.
So Kurt Bowman, Morgan Olson, Scotty Torlin. This year we celebrated our 25th year branding at the Bowman Ranch.
Oh,
up there in Grad.
Awesome.
We did it. I've missed one, and it was the year my daughter was born.
No kidding.
She was born the weekend that they were branding.
I guess that's a pretty good excuse. Yeah.
Yeah. But other than that, I've made every one. And it's one of those fun things that you go up there the night before on a Friday and you brand a few calves and drink some beer and talk about the old days. The next day you go over there behind the Flying J and brand a bunch more calves and then sit around and have a good lunch. And awesome. That's one of those things that I want to grow old with.
Definitely. Yeah. I haven't seen those guys in a while. I ran into Scotty Torlin's, I think, brother one time when I was doing research up out of Troy, and we ended up playing golf together in Union. How random is that? I'm like, Torlin, Scotty Torlin? He's like, oh, that's my brother. I think it was brother or cousin. So I was like, get the hell out of Dodge. He was too funny. Yeah, it's just those great great friendships. And it was kind of funny for me being from Lakeview when we first got to college, and you run into somebody from Burns, like, Burns, you guys are weird, and then like a week into college, we're like, you guys are just as crazy as we are. It's beautiful. And so, that raised some hair when you'd go home and you'd say, yeah, my friend Ryan from Burns. And like the room would get a little quiet. You're like, they're okay people. All right, damn it. And so that was the big thing we got over, was all of that. So, yeah, it's just awesome. I think I don't keep in touch with everybody near as much as I should. And like,
no, I don't either.
3 weeks ago, I think Marty Campbell called. I was in a meeting and I called him back later. I'm like, dude, what's going on? And he's like, oh, I just do this thing now where I call people that I haven't talked to you in a while. And so you're on my list. And I was like, no kidding. He's like, yeah, what do you think? I'm like, I think it's beautiful. So we talked for a while and away we went. Yeah. So I'm going to start that.
Teaching online kind of gets that to a teacher.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
I was asking him today, we had a media day there at the Roundup grounds, and he and I were talking. I'm like, you talked to Cody Waite? I think he's in Nebraska or something.
I've seen Cody for ages. Yeah.
I haven't either. But he and I were talking about it. I talked to him, I think it was about 10 years ago I talked to him. And Cody's word was always, hey, butthead.
Uh-huh.
And so I remember calling him on the phone, and Annie answered the phone, his wife, and talked to her for a few minutes. And then I said, hey, can I talk to Cody? She goes, yeah. And as soon as he picked up the phone, I go, what's going on, butthead?
Something he probably hadn't heard in a while, I'm going to guess.
Oh, God, It was funny.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, that blast from the past. That's I did that to Kevin Kahn. We always called him Kevy at college. And we were home for spring break in Lakeview one year, and I called his house. He didn't have a cell phone anyways. And so his mom answers. I'm like, hey, is Kevy there? And she's like, yeah, hold on a second. And you hear her yell, Kevy. And then a few minutes later, here comes Kevin on the phone, and he's like, you son of a bitch. I'm like, what are you doing, man? He's like, it took me 19 years to get her to stop calling me Kevy. And you called one time, and now I'm Kevy again. And I just started laughing. I'm like, well, that'll learn you. Get a phone, man. So.
Oh, that's funny.
Poor Kevy. Yeah.
Yeah. I see Keith Houchin every once in a while. I think he's in the ag industry around Walla Walla still.
Yeah, he's working on the family place over there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll see him every once in a while, auctions or something like that.
Something random.
Yeah, something random. But yeah, I'll never forget those days, and it's kind of molded, I think, everybody into, and which rightfully so it should mold people if they take in the full experience of college. It should mold people into who they are.
I think that's a great point. If you really just embrace it, it's about learning. Certainly not all about books. It's just about learning how to learn, for one, and just learning how to meet new people. I think was one of the favorite things I got out of that whole deal was, just people.
Yeah, you learned from Mark Greer that when QuickBooks came along, you're not going to do paperwork anymore longhand.
Yeah.
Bullshit. And Penny, to her credit, worked her ass off to say, all right, Art, no more logbook and doing anything longhand. Let's get these guys into this one.
Exactly.
And that's right when QuickBooks was coming along. And so the econ classes from Penny, Paul and I talk about it all the time. I mean, ROI or anything that she brought. Shit, Paul still has some of the econ books
I'm sure,
in the office here. I mean, yeah, it's I won't forget those days.
No, I'm so grateful for those. Yeah. It's been awesome. Well, you brought up one of your other day jobs about Pendleton Roundup, so I wanted to touch on that a little bit too, since this year's different than most years, I guess you could say.
It's been different. It's been real different. So just kind of the history of me and the Pendleton Roundup.
That'd be great. Yeah.
I started volunteering in 2000. The year I graduated college, or actually the year after I graduated college. My wife and I got married in 2000, the 8th of July, and which was a
remember that,
vacation.
by the way. Good job. Yeah.
And the last vacation I think I've ever been on. She was a travel agent. We started harvest on the 9th of July, and I went to Jamaica for 10 days. It was awesome. But I started volunteering that year for Roundup. Joe Talbot, a rancher south of Pilot Rock, or south of Pendleton, said, I need somebody with some cattle experience to come in here and help us sorting calves and stuff like that. So would you be glad to help? I've been a volunteer for Happy Canyon since I was 6 or 7 years old. My dad was a show director over there for 4 years. And so I was really involved on the Happy Canyon side. And back in those days, the difference between volunteering for Roundup and volunteering for Happy Canyon was kind of like the Berlin Wall. I mean,
we don't talk about those people over there. Yeah.
It was, the fun havers and the money makers, I'll call it. I mean, to stereotype it. I mean, it was one of those things that brought people to town. The other one was come over and have fun for the nightlife. And so the only thing that drove the economy for Happy Canyon was getting people to town on the Roundup side. So I'd just helped out in the livestock sorting and, just helping wherever a guy could. And then I got kind of moved up through, I guess, seniority or whatever you want to call it. Started calling cattle and doing splits and sorting and all that kind of stuff from the secretary's office. That was all done on a chalkboard, basically, on the infield, because there wasn't the technology to communicate from the secretary's office, which is, 300 yards away in the pavilion, to the infield. And so that was my job of getting all the splits right, because especially in the bulldog on slack day, you'd have one guy hazing for 17 different cowboys. Well, you didn't want to wait 4 minutes between each run, going back and forth. Not only that, but he didn't want to blow his horse up.
Exactly.
So I did some splits, and then at the advent of iPads or Kindles in 2011, I think was our first year, we tried just doing communication, speedy communication, having the secretary's office do it and then send it over. And then if there was quick splits we had to do, you have to shift those, stock number along with the cowboy around up to the crow's nest or to the announcer stand. And so we worked on that. They asked me to join the board in 2013. I guess 2013 was my first year, my first rodeo on the Roundup board. Served as livestock director for 7 years the whole time. In 2014, Pendleton became their own primary stock contractor per se. So we hire all of our own contractors. We don't hire a managing contractor that hires all the subs. We do it ourselves. We select all of our own bucking horses and bulls and handpick all the stock that comes. And then we've always had the timed event side where we've hired them. Pendleton hired them themselves. So it saves us some money, but two, it gives us more ability to put on the most consistent, best bucking horses and bulls that you can stick under cowboys Wednesday through Saturday.
What year did that start again?
2014.
Okay. Wow.
Was our first year. And so 2015, we won the PRCA Remuda Award for the best, most consistent bucking horses and bulls in the PRCA out of 633 rodeos.
That's a pretty good sign you were doing something right then. Yeah. I mean, first year out, like wham. Yeah.
Yeah. It was pretty awesome. And I will work forever trying to help the future of the livestock directors of Pendleton Roundup to win that award again, because I just think it's one of those unseen awards to take pride in.
Absolutely. It means the most, I think, to all the cowboys that come to the rodeo, though.
Yep, for sure. Yeah. So to listen to some of those cowboys when they, I remember 2016, I think it was, or 2015, they had the Justin Boots playoffs in Omaha, Nebraska. And I was just going on to the Association Rodeo Committee's board, and I rode with a cowboy, Stephen Peebles, who's actually from Central Oregon, and he sat next to me on the plane, and he qualified for Omaha. And I said, hey, sorry, he drew a horse that didn't quite up to par at Pendleton, and he was like a 74 or something, didn't win anyway. And I'm like, God, this is going to be the longest 3.5 hour plane ride in the frickin' world.
Exactly.
He says, besides me, he says, the Cowboys, he says, I love what you're doing. He says, that horse just had an off day. He says, but what you guys are doing for the sport of rodeo is amazing. And now there's, a half a dozen to probably 15 rodeos that are really starting to
Mm-hmm.
work a lot closer with their stock contractors, in my opinion.
Yeah.
To make sure, because it doesn't matter if you're a Lakeview rodeo that you want, you don't need to have 22-point horses at Lakeview.
Yeah.
But if you have 30 horses at Lakeview that are 16 to 20-point horses, the crowd's going to love it.
Absolutely.
You don't need the bell dingers there.
No.
But at the caliber rodeo that Pendleton is, you want those 18 to 22-point horses that Pendleton's at. And Pendleton has the luxury of being one of the last rodeos of the year, so those
Mm-hmm.
contestants get to look at some of the best stock that the PRCA has to offer so they can select them for the NFR. So
True. Yeah. That's outstanding. And I hadn't heard that story yet. That's really cool.
Yeah, it's been a fun deal. I mean, the whole stock side of it, and that's, I was raised, Andy Ely raised stock, who he sold some horses to and was partners with Beards for a while, and then sold some horses to Bridwell Rodeo, Pistolani and some of them, Raggedy Ann, some NFR quality horses.
Mm-hmm.
And he's still in it to this day. The guy, he just has a knack for raising good bucking horses. But shit, he was basically part of the farmstead here, and so I worked for him on afternoons, evenings in high school and college and stuff. And Erin still is a great friend of ours. She's in the
I was gonna say you raised some good daughters too.
Yeah. So it's people like that kind of gave me an idea of what to look for. By no means, I mean, I was still a novice at it, but now after going through it, and when you're selecting stock and you're going through reels and reels of Wrangler Network or Pro Rodeo Live TV, watching horses buck from Sikeston, Missouri to, nowhere, Florida, or Wisconsin, or, Canada, watching all these guys and say, I want 10 of your horses, or I want 5 of your horses, or I want 3 of your bulls. And you just call them up and just say, hey, will you come to Pendleton? And it's one of those iconic rodeos that those stock contractors go, I don't care. Scott Pickens brings a trailer load of bulls from Oklahoma. I would say financially, it's probably a break-even deal at best.
Yeah.
But he knows that the reward on his side, and this may be getting way down into his business, but the reward on his side of him getting bulls to the NFR and coming back, because he was born and raised in Baker City. Yeah. He's coming home, and he wants to come buck at Pendleton.
How could you not love that?
So
when do you start that process in the year? It's usually second full week in September's roundup time. When is that going on when you're getting those picks put in and getting a hold of people?
So our stock contractors for this coming year are already in the books for this year. Mm-hmm. So we're looking out in advance. And then for the stock contractors themselves, then the horses and bulls that they're bringing, we start picking when they start going. Sankeys are kind of a late summer run. So they're late July, August, and then you start threading through their horses and bulls during that period. Calgary, they usually get a pretty good winter run in of San Antonio, San Angelo, the American, things like that, Denver. Yeah. And so you can, on a normal year, you can look up all their stats and stock and watch their rodeos throughout the spring run. And then, because, they're a pretty big outfit that packs a hell of a, 2-3 liners full of bucking horses. And then there's some of those other ones that, they're not big guys. Jeff Davis, Brookman Rodeo, Wayne Vold out of Canada, Outlaw Buckers. They're not big by any means, but they are consistent, and they're players in the game that have some of the best horses going down the road, or bulls going down the road, that you just know that they're going to be at Pinoca or Lakeview or Red Bluff, or, whatever those rodeos that they're going to be at. You just identify them and watch them and rewatch them and rewatch them, talk to the contestants, talk to the event reps, and really learn, which ones are the ones that they want to have at Pendleton.
Yeah, outstanding. Do the stock contractors also, they're like, hey, you're going to love this one I got coming up, or are they giving you that kind of feedback?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the one that I kind of and Wade Sankey's become a friend of mine. Sankey Rodeo, they're great people and Phenom Genetics. Wade, he'll send me anywhere from 80 to 150 horses, and to say it nicely, he'll send a Excel spreadsheet and he'll say short round or long round with some stats behind it, and then he'll be on there, Ike's favorite horse, I don't know why, or you know,
you gotta trust Ike too.
Yeah, you know, or you know, this horse here this colt was a twin, or you know, he just has all that kind of stuff identified that kind of tells the story that turns into a phenomenal story in the end.
Yeah.
So you say, man, that Irish Eyes horse was a nobody horse, or, you know, Black Widow, whatever the horse name is that they buck, and they're like, holy crap, this horse couldn't, you know, we almost turned this horse into a saddle horse. They won Lewis in Idaho last year on it, or they won, you know, Cody, Wyoming, or, you know, some of these other horses. They're like, this is a horse that's now 7 years old that you better pay attention to.
Yeah, that's awesome.
You know, and they'll say,
track along.
Track along, and they'll say, she doesn't buck, you know, I'll make her right with you, you know.
Yeah.
But I think it's worth the risk. But because Pendleton, we have an inferior clause at Pendleton that if the horse itself caused a re-ride not because of a shoot foul or mechanical failure, if they're just less than stellar performers, that we don't have to pay for them, because we need to be able to afford the re-ride that they're going to get on.
True. Yeah.
So for $425 an out, a guy's got to manage your dollars on both sides, and that eliminates some of those guys bringing some colts,
some fillers. Yeah.
Yep.
Don't try to prove them out here, man. We need to get stuff. Yeah.
This is the wrong this is the wrong pasture to buck in.
Yeah, exactly. So, when did you take over as president?
A year ago, this coming November. So,
welcome aboard. Yeah.
Welcome aboard. And by the way, it's going to be probably the hardest year you're ever going to be faced with. But
I can only imagine. Yeah.
So our foot was on the you know, November came along. We went to Vegas last year, won large outdoor rodeo again for the 7th time. Exciting. You know, it's awesome. Great to have that. You know, we became, you know, Cheyenne's always had a great rodeo, but we've just worked at it a little bit harder. Not saying that they didn't, but just trying to work on the nuances, whether it's picking stock or making sure the hospitalities or parking or pen space or feed or all that kind of stuff, but making sure that when all the details, when the contestants came to town, they were coming home. They had some place to rest their feet and set their spurs for a while and hang their hat for a week. You know, either they were coming in for slack days, in and out, and going down to Albuquerque or Pasadena, Texas, and then coming back for the short round. But we wanted to make them feel like they were home. And it's everything from the hospitality to what kind of food you got. I mean, some of those cowboys said, man, I ate at this place in, God, nowhere, Oklahoma, that had this really good French fries or really good, you know, pulled pork sandwiches or something. And like, God, you know what? All we have is this kind of food. Let's try this. And so listen to those.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
So just listen to those guys, and we do a little bit of hospitality out back and cowboy breakfast, but just treat them, you know, like they're part of the team. I think paid dividends. And like, again, no offense to Cheyenne and Tom, those guys, because they're busting their butt hard too. And we learn from their playbook is really what it boils down to.
And everybody's getting better and coming out. Everybody's winning, you know?
Yeah, without a doubt. Without a doubt.
That's the great thing. And that's some cool stuff too, that I think I'll just say the average person walking down the street doesn't think about all those little details that everybody's putting their brain together about asking the contestants, like, about the food, about this, about what works great. All those details play together. I think that's cool. That's where people's minds are focused too, because if you've never been to Pendleton Roundup, like it's an insane week or two of just the scale is mind blowing to me to think about, and to be able to focus down on the small stuff like that too, really sets it apart, I think, from everybody else.
Quality farriers, getting good farriers there because we got to put ice nails in on the grass, things like that. Having good feed for them because we provide hay for them. So make sure you got good grass or alfalfa for them. Having good clean pen space, plenty of parking, good access to the arena, all that kind of stuff. And just having a welcoming crew. So when they pull in and have to go through security, making sure that those people are welcome to Pendleton instead of, what the hell are you doing here?
Yeah, exactly.
There's 744 contestants just like you. Don't beg from me. So when security treats them well, and then it's just a trickle down because you got to have that welcoming crew that is excited to see them. That sets the tone for it.
Exactly right. I think everything just runs smoother too if everybody's happy and nothing's plugging up, because there's 5 million plates to spin during that time. I don't have to tell you that. And I know when I get to see you during Roundup, it's literally like, dude, hey, high five, because you're going this way about 100 miles an hour. And then I see you next time you're going that way about 100 miles an hour. And everybody, all the directors are running around like, just chaos. And it would be so much crazier if all those little details weren't being ran, like they should be. So hats off to all you guys for that, for sure.
Trevor Brazil went in the Hall of Fame at Pendleton last year, and I think he said it best. He says, when asked what your favorite rodeo is, Pendleton Roundup. And he says the ones that you ask that don't say Pendleton Roundup because they're too scared to admit it. And I think
awesome.
that, or something like that, but it's because there's some of those guys that coming off the hill at Pendleton go out on the grass. It just scares the tar out of them.
Yeah, it's different. It's unique. Yeah.
Yeah. So so to go back to kind of your first question of how I came into it, Dave O'Neill, I was his vice president last year. A fellow director of mine, Mike Ledbetter, that came on, the same as he's got a business that he's running as sole proprietorship, refrigeration business in town. And he understands that he's got to get back to business. It's amazing how fast 8 years goes. We're 2 4-year terms as director, and then you can serve an additional 2 years. I ran 1 year early, so a 4-year term as director, a 3-year term as director, and then a year as president. But it's amazing how fast that time flies when you're a director, just because you're going all the time.
Yeah.
And so Dave O'Neill acted as president. They asked me if I would be it, and I got ratified by the stockholders last November, and thought, you know what, we're going to put on another great Pendleton Roundup. Foot was on the gas, came about March, and COVID-19 started hinting around and getting sprinkled across our media and stuff like that. And then it was like, well, there's hints that there might be some events canceled. And I think one of the first ones in Oregon that was really popped up was maybe the Shakespeare Festival down in Ashland. And then they have a big concert, a country festival or something down
around Lebanon or Sweet Home or something like that.
Yeah, Sweet Home, something like that. And that one got the brakes put on it. And we're like, well, this might last. This isn't a 3-month blip on the radar. Let's start thinking about this. So we started kind of putting some brakes, or we did put some brakes on some budgets, and then started looking at our timeline. All right, how far out can we go to put on Pendleton without affecting Pendleton Roundup? So without spending money.
Yeah.
And it was mid-June to end of June. So then we started gearing up with and talking to, at first with our county health officials and county commissioners and our city officials. All right, give us some intel. What's this really look like? Nobody knew. I mean, it's like asking a chalkboard, why are you green? I mean, it's just one of those things you just don't understand, but it's just the way it was. So you're asking for them for the $1 million answer.
Yeah, and they're like, I don't get paid enough to know that. Yeah.
I'm just a doctor, or I'm just, the health official for the county.
Yeah.
but made great strides with communication. And then it got into end of April, and we thought, you know what, we'll start going a little bit taller in the oak tree.
Mm-hmm.
So we called the governor's office and met with Kate Brown and Dr. Seidlinger, and really started seeing what this was. And very open, great conversations we had with Salem, and really just trying to see, God, what's this really going to look like? Because they're getting information and intel from a national level.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to keep it Umatilla County, or at least Eastern Oregon.
Yeah.
And we're thinking, but Pendleton Roundup has guests from all around the world. So we're trying to figure out what's going to compromise our situation, what could be brought to Pendleton that could maybe hamper.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Other things.
Yeah.
So we really started looking at that, and I just really getting educated, I think, was a big time. Bringing in, you know, we had to bring in all government from around the area. And then we had 4 meetings with them at the state level, continuing having every couple of weeks with our county officials, just gauging how many were getting infected, what's this look like, you know, what's the protocol going to be? Well, you know, they're thinking they might have a vaccine by, at that time, was the first to the middle of November, and then it was the end of December, and then it was the 1st of March. And then we're like, well, you know, you can't have an event if you don't have a vaccine. Well, they might change that to where you can have a scaled down event. And then it was 250 people, or it was 1,000 people. Then it was 500. Then it was 250. Then it was 100. Well, it was a tough call for Pendleton, because if you would say, all right, you can have 1,000 people at your event, we have over 1,000 volunteers. So how do you tell a volunteer which one of you can't come and which ones can? That doesn't do anything for Pendleton. It doesn't do anything for our community. It's part of what makes Pendleton proud as volunteers around it.
Yeah.
And Happy Canyon. And so then you start thinking about 750 contestants. How do you schedule contestants to come in? All right, you come in every 5 minutes, but there better be one leaving every 5 minutes. But you got to keep 6 feet apart, wearing face masks, all this kind of stuff. And then we looked at, you know, of course, the big thing is a revenue driver, which is how we support our community.
Mm-hmm.
Once you get below a certain percentage of threshold, you realize we're not going to make any money. And if Pendleton Roundup loses money, it doesn't do anything for our community. But not having anybody in the stands, having Altrusa parking them in RVs, or having Kiwanis parking them, or having Lions serving you a cheeseburger, or having wrestling clubs serving you a beer and hamburgers, or, you know, all those different not-for-profits or different organizations being able to raise money for their organization.
Absolutely, yeah.
Like,
that's their yearly harvest, so to speak. Yeah.
So that's how they get their scholarship money, or how they make their traveling squad pay for going to different baseball games, or whatever it is. We're like, man, this is a little bit bigger task than you have to look community-wide.
There's a lot of stuff tied together, not just that one event in the middle. Yeah, great point.
We had to be put on our thinking caps in a very short amount of time, not for Pendleton Roundup, but for everybody that helps Pendleton Roundup. Yeah. And it was put in a tough position because you don't want to think for them, and they don't want you to not put on a rodeo, but you have to figure out all of a sudden, how are you going to make them still be successful without affecting your event? So about May 1st or end of May, 1st of June, Tanner Hawkins, the president of Happy Canyon, and myself came up with what was then called the Community Cares Committee, and which has now turned into the LeterBuck Cares Committee. Yeah. And okay, if we don't have a roundup, what's our backup plan? Because we're going to start going down this road, and Nick Saravatka did a phenomenal job of putting together a safety protocol for Pendleton Roundup at a half capacity, roughly plus or minus, and what we have to do for wash stations, bathrooms, porta potties, seating people, all that kind of stuff. Put all that protocols in place, and we sent it to the state, and they edited it, sent it back to us. We sent it back to them. I mean, that communication was great. And when we start going through those avenues of protocols and perspective of what it's going to take to get Pendleton Roundup put on as a community support effort, and then talking to the governor for the last couple of times, and she's like, if you can't do it at this capacity, and you can't, it's not going to do anything for your community at having zero capacity, then I don't think that you guys can have a Pendleton Roundup. So we were like, well, that's not what we wanted to hear. Let's give it one more try. So we really sat down as a board and just tried to, what did we miss? And we started calling I wouldn't say every other rodeo, but a lot of different organizations, Cheyenne, and you know, some big rodeos and big festivals. We were on a large venues meeting. Anybody that had a capacity of 50% or better that they were going to try to get something done with, that had the same community mindset. How can we get this done? Man, I'll tell you what, we cracked every egg we could. We called back the governor and said, all right, this is what we can do. We are going to make sure that Pendleton is healthy. But our big thing that we have to stick with is our community has to stay vibrant. And she says, it's not going to work. So within that fateful day in the mid to end of June, we announced it to the world that Pendleton Roundup wasn't going to happen. It still chokes me up to this day because it was the toughest call for our board that we had to make. But the positive that came out of it, we had LeterBuck Cares loaded in the barrel, ready to go. So as soon as we announced that we were canceling, we had LeterBuck Cares kicked off. Yeah. And it's been it'll be, if not the highlight of me being on the Roundup board, of being able to say for 110 years, this community has stood behind Pendleton Roundup. And on the 111th year or the 110th year, Pendleton Roundup said, you know what, we're getting behind our community. And we're going to show that our community, that we appreciate you for what you've done for us, our non-for-profits, our social clubs, our football teams, our schools, everything, that we're here to help you guys out. And that's what we stand for. And it's been a rocket ship ever since then.
That's been awesome to watch. Can you explain it just for everybody who's maybe in different parts of the country haven't kept up, what exactly LeterBuck Cares does and how it's working?
LeterBuck Cares, I brought in a team of allies, I'll say. We got a few directors from Happy Canyon, a couple of directors from Roundup Board, and then I brought in some guys off the bench, I'll call it. Brought some past directors in that, because one of the things that made me extremely nervous was when we said we're canceling Pendleton Roundup, the passion that the Roundup and Happy Canyon board of directors put into putting on a rodeo, and you have to walk into that room and say, we're not putting on an event. You're cutting all the steam out of the room.
Oh yeah.
So I need to have somebody, and not saying that they didn't have it, but I wanted to give them some time to digest it or to understand. You guys, we're going to shift gears on business. We're not going to have a rodeo. We have a lot of other stuff that we can capitalize on our time to get things cleaned up. So I'm going to bring some guys from the old guard that are dearly respected, that are sound, sane, etc., have some great reach throughout the community and the state to help us out and get through this LeterBuck Cares deal. And it was taken greatly, and getting those people to get LeterBuck Cares going and off the ground and take the edge off of our current directors was, in my opinion, a great move, because they still had the guys that were past directors, they didn't know we were canceling or not, but they still had the love of Pendleton Roundup and the community.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so feeling the pain of having somebody walk into the room and say, nope, you're not putting on your event. I still had somebody that had some steam to keep going with it. So LeterBuck Cares was, you could refund or roll over your tickets to next year, and you can still have your tickets next year. You can refund your tickets and donate them to this LeterBuck Cares Fund to support the community, or you could donate directly to LeterBuck Cares Fund. And so we were going to do some foundation stuff within our own foundation. In a very quick phone call, OCF, Oregon Community Foundation, had one that was literally plug and play. Within 20 minutes of our first meeting, called them and said, we need to have, or we'd like to explore the options of Pendleton Roundup having a place to put money to donate to the community. And they said, oh, we got one. Here's a link right here. Put Pendleton Roundup or Happy Canyon at the top. Put your logos up there. It's plug and play that quick. And in 20 minutes, our first meeting, we had OCF and LeterBuck Cares designed. I mean, it was amazing. Instead of having to go through and create, numbers and signatories and all that kind of stuff, I mean, it was boom, ready to go. So it went off like a rocket ship. We had lots of volunteers and local businesses that added to it. They, one of our latest ones, the LeterBuck Challenge with Pendleton Whiskey, graciously, they've been phenomenal partners for 14, 15, 16 years. Even with their transition from HRD to Proximo, they still carry on the passion of the Western way of life, and especially the Pendleton Roundup and LeterBuck. And so they gave us $150,000 to help our community out. Coca-Cola jumped in. I mean, there's been numerous businesses, Banner Bank, $38,000. I mean, there's been numerous businesses that have always been longtime sponsors that said, you know what, this is an exciting time. It's a different time. But even though we're not having a rodeo or not having a PBR or not having a Happy Canyon, we're still going to support our community. And I'm so proud of them for doing that. And I can't thank them enough. I can't write them enough letters. And it's been one of those things that makes a guy proud to be a part of the Pendleton community, for sure.
Absolutely. I think to see people channel all that energy that would go into the Roundup into this has been really fun to watch, especially from where I'm, across the country, and you see it and you hear about it and you get to participate in it. And how much has been raised so far, Randy?
With hopefully announcing it's probably $860,000.
That's right.
And our goal is $1 million.
That's awesome. And how does that get dispersed back out and to what groups?
So we did it in 3 tiers that actually turned into 5 tiers, but it was tier 1, tier 1B, tier 2, tier 2B, and tier 3. So tier 1 and tier 1B are non-for-profits and what we call home plate. So on the Roundup grounds. So anybody that helps Pendleton Roundup and Happy Canyon on the grounds, and the committee, the LeterBuck Cares committee, and then goes back to our Happy Canyon Roundup boards to get approved. But they come up with all the names and get all the organizations. And the cool part about it, that we sent out an application to all those organizations, Shriners,
Lions, swim,
Lions, Rotary, you name them, even the school clubs and the ag clubs and the dance teams. We sent them an application. One of the benefits to it was we got their history. So one of the things we wanted to put is 300 words or less, is give us a bio of what you've done for Pendleton Roundup in the past.
Oh, awesome.
So they can tell us that we give away $4,500 in scholarships annually, or we do books for kids, or we do, state police, we do, shopping with a cop, or, all the different clubs and non-for-profits. We got their bios back, and then they sent us, and they would send us basically their profit and loss statements from Pendleton Roundup. And those non-for-profits and those clubs, we made them whole.
That's
without
amazing.
having Pendleton Roundup. We wrote them a check for what they did last year, or close to it. And one of the side stories that came out of there was a gal that called me from a local school district because I believe it was Kiwanis couldn't fund all of their scholarships because of COVID. I think there was 8 scholarships they wanted to fund. They could only fund 4 of them. We gave them money for LeterBuck Cares. They went ahead and paid those scholarships for those other 4. And that young lady called me and said, thank you very much for coming up with LeterBuck Cares, because I got my $1,500 scholarship. That hit home.
I was just
that
saying,
makes the guy.
If that don't give you goosebumps like I got right now, there's something wrong with you,
Yeah. Yeah, it was awesome. And so Friday of Roundup, we've had enough money in there that we handed out a lot of checks to Lions Club, Altrusa, Paws, things like that. But we said, please come down and come down to the Roundup grounds out in front of the buck and shoots. We're going to present you with a check. We didn't tell them how much their check was. And so we had one of those kick-ass large checks, award checks, that were all backwards to them. And then we'd say, all right, come up here and have your photo taken. And then we'd say, on behalf of Happy Canyon, Pendleton Roundup, and LeterBuck Cares, here's a check for $20,000. And thank God there's enough people there to hold them up, because there was so many of them. Shit, I was in tears for 3 hours, damn near.
Have to be. Yeah, I'm goosebumping up like crazy.
It was a phenomenal experience. It was great to see, but the pride that those people have, not only in Pendleton Roundup, but for their community and what they're going to do with that. And they would tell their whole story right then and there. This is going to go to helping sick kids with Shriners, or this is going to help, with scholarships, or all that stuff was amazing. And it's one of those experiences that I'll never forget.
Talking about making something good out of something bad. I mean, that's really the epitome of that. And I think it was good thinking on your guys' part for sure. And just to see everybody chipped in, it just makes you proud to be part of it. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And the Roundup and Happy Canyon board of directors have been nothing short of amazing to deal with all this. They're all great people, and every single one of them come from different businesses and different walks of life per se, but they all bring something different to the table that means something to the community, and they think that's what they're always thinking about. So even when they set foot in the boardroom, they're thinking about Pendleton Roundup, but they're thinking about global. They're thinking about not, maybe industry-wide, community-wide, county-wide, statewide, of what it's. A guy doesn't realize, being a director, and this is maybe a little off the subject, but when you go down to Vegas for your first time as a director, and everybody walks up to you and they want to know what's your secret sauce that makes Pendleton so great, but you can't tell them, because you can't tell them unless they experience it.
Yeah.
It's one of those things. You can't tell anybody what's it like to have 50, 60,000 people in a town of 16,000, and they're your friends when they come into town. They're there to have fun. They're there to watch the Indians. They're there to watch downtown. They're there to watch Happy Canyon. There's a lot of people that come to town that don't even go to the rodeo, that just come to walk around the rodeo.
Be part of the whole atmosphere. Yeah, absolutely.
And so you can't tell that or explain that to anybody unless they're there. So what's your secret sauce?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'll tell you all day long. I'll video it. You can watch it on Wrangler Network. You can watch, unless you're boots on the ground, smelling the hot air out of the LeterBuck room, or the curly fries, or the grass on Tuesday morning, the slack.
Yeah.
You can't fathom it.
No, you can't. I try to explain it to people all the time, because I'll talk. I'm like, when I take a job or I'm like, so there's one time of the year where I'm going to be off the grid, and you won't see me. I don't care what you say about it. This is before I come on board. It's the second full week in September. I'm going to be at Pendleton Roundup. They're like, what's that? Or what do you mean? I'm like, it's just like the biggest family reunion in the world that lasts for, 10 days. So I can't explain it to you. Just know that's what it means to me, and you're welcome to come with me. But I can't describe it. And like, a buddy of mine came up from Texas last year. He's like, holy shit. Like, it's like, now it's in his blood. Like, he knows what it's about, and he'll probably come back every year just because he got to experience it. Just one of those things.
I had the opportunity a couple years ago, 3 years ago, I think it was, I went to the Netherlands. Travel Oregon sent me to the Netherlands. A phenomenal experience. And went back there to a town called Utrecht, a small community in the Netherlands, believe it or not, that has 300,000 people in it. And they said, yeah, this is a small community. I mean, it's just, in Netherlands, you can fit into the Netherlands in 2 counties in Oregon.
Yeah.
Grant and Malheur County is the whole country, but they have 12 times the population. I mean, it's just nuts.
Amazing. Yeah.
But to go back there, it's a different world. But you have the same spirit of people back there that were just as friendly. Most of the people that came by to travel Oregon, or they had seven different buildings for 7 different continents.
Mm.
And Oregon had one corner of North America.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of funny. I was there with, of course, my black hat on and roundup director and all that kind of stuff. Had a roping dummy. I'm out there roping the dummy in the middle of the highway. People are, and I got on the news the first Thursday I was there. I got on the news, and this gal's asking me questions, and I'm just nodding my head because she's talking to me in Dutch. I'm like,
and you're like,
I'm just going to sit here and rope. Yep, I'm just going to sit here and rope. That's it. Great experience. But the next year, I think we had 80 or 100 people from the Netherlands that came over to the United States and came to Roundup.
No way.
It was awesome. And so
That's
you just
crazy.
wonder, it's just amazing what their reach is of people that want. The Netherlands people love Native Americans and cowboys. Love it. Native Americans are huge back there. And so anywhere they could go see authentic Native Americans, authentic cowboys.
Uh-huh.
And so they have tour guides back there, and I gave them a tour the next year. They came out here to the ranch and toured them around and showed them, you know, back there they're highly regulated agriculture, highly regulated.
Yeah.
A huge farm in the Netherlands, 80 acres. And so we're sitting up on top, up here. We got our first 2 circles you come to, looks out over the other 33 circles, and I said, well, you know, that circle right there, and I'm running all the circles off my phone, and they're like, well, how big's that circle right there? I said, well, that's 127 acres. I said, that's 3 times the size of any farm in the Netherlands. I'm like,
it just blows their mind how we are. I think it's always really entertaining.
The cool thing about what they have back there is they have farmers markets every day in Utrecht.
Absolutely.
So 300,000 people every day. 10 city blocks are farmers markets where celery, tomatoes, they have sides of pork or beef hanging there. And
awesome.
it was great. And so to come, you know, I want, you know, some country style ribs. They just whittle them out.
Yeah, where you
go.
Them
out, set them in a bag.
You kind of go shopping like every day though, because you have like a tiny house and refrigerator like this. So that's what you do when you come home from work. You just go shopping and get dinner. It's a totally different way of life. Yeah.
So when they were out here, they were just starting to pick sweet corn. They were just starting to pick onions. They were just starting to dig spuds. And I had some beef in the freezer. And so we just rolled around. I said, all right, we're going to dig this stuff right out of the ground and do it the same way you guys do it. Except we're going to get dirty doing it. I'm not going to bring it to you. You got to go get it.
Oh, awesome.
We didn't have to butcher a cow. We still had it in the freezer, but everything else. I mean, they ate sweet corn right off the husk, right out in the field. Onions the same way. Eat them like an apple.
Oh.
They thought that was amazing.
I was gonna say they're never going to forget that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just some of those experiences I've had on the Roundup board have just been phenomenal.
That's amazing.
So.
That's So you guys have. So this year, obviously, we're past it now. It's in the books. It's not happening. You guys adapted really well. What's the plan for next year? Is there contingency? Is it what's your guys' frame of mind?
So we're gonna here by the 1st of January, going to put in our contingency plan and keep our what has turned from a COVID-19 plan into an emergency operations manual.
Mm-hmm.
Because the other thing that probably would have affected Roundup, even if we didn't have COVID-19, was the smoke. It was smokier than hell in Umatilla County that second week of September. And I mean damn smoky, almost unhealthy, or could have been unhealthy smoky. We had
that's a great point. Yeah.
3 or 4 years ago in Hood River when they had those big fires down there.
Mm-hmm.
We had it bad in Pendleton this year, and it was brutal. So we're going to encompass a lot of things, not only COVID, but smoke. And we're going to team up with a tribe and put together a COVID or a emergency operations manual or guideline for future directors and future boards to look at going, for lack of a better term, what's our oh shit stamp of what do we do in this situation? And it wasn't really written down. You know, 9/11 was a big one. I can remember when when 9/11 happened, I was listening to it on the radio and I was just pulling into the Roundup grounds that morning. and left my camper over across the freeway, was pulling the Roundup grounds, and I'm like, what is this? I thought I was listening to Bob and Tom, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like a joke. It was like, you're waiting for the punchline of
Gotcha.
Jeff Dunham.
Yeah.
Yep. And so I'm walking up the timed event alley with all my satchel of paperwork and looking for the director that I was working with. He's nowhere to be seen. And I'm like, where is everybody? And they're like, they're having an emergency meeting. I'm like, about what? And Justin McKee was announcer at the time, and he's playing the live news footage over the radio or over the announcers in the arena. So everybody's listening to it. And there's not a cowboy moving.
Yeah.
They're just sitting there holding on to their horses, just like stunned in awe. And then an hour and 10 minutes later, they come out and said, we're doing this for America. Let's rodeo.
Mm-hmm.
All right, get your horses warmed up. Load the first 20 calves. Let's go, boys.
I got goosebumps again. Yeah. We sang God Bless the USA probably no less than 10,000 times that roundup.
Yeah.
I think it just broke out like everywhere at all times. It was amazing. Yeah. And a lot of it's compared the two situations. Like, we didn't stop for 9/11. This was different, though. I mean, even I have to admit that this situation was different.
Oh, yeah.
All the way around.
Yep, for sure.
But I think
the future's the unknown with this whole thing. The future's the unknown. So you get the one side of it, now that I've built somewhat of a rapport with Salem, I'm not afraid to call them anymore. Hey, what's 2021 going to look like?
Yeah.
There might be some things in place, but I think that with the resiliency you guys have, Pendleton Roundup's going to happen. In one way or another, Pendleton Roundup's going to happen. I want Pendleton Roundup to happen full bore or at a very top-notch scale because we can't do it with nobody in the stands, stuff like that. No, I think we've got guidelines. And then you hear this morning of the Dr. Fauci or whatever says this shit's not going to be over with until spring of 2022.
Yeah.
You're like, shit. But it's the same way that came to fruition of LeterBuck Cares. I'm positive that we're going to get something done for 2021, and we're going to put our foot on the gas until somebody tells us you cannot drive through this brick wall any harder without cracking your skull. So that's the attitude that I'm going at it, is we're going to have a 2021, and Pendleton Roundup and Happy Canyon and our community are going to be successful, resilient, and we're going to make sure that we let our buck.
Outstanding. And you got a whole lot longer to kind of get your feces groups instead of like on the run also, I think, which is a huge advantage.
Yeah, having, this is kind of funny. So in transition at least I'm going to call it the last 20 years of becoming a director to becoming a president, you get a 3-ring binder. We call it the Roundup Bible. So every director passes on from their directorship. I was one of the fortunate ones that had livestock my whole tenure on Roundup. But some of those guys get moved around from different positions. But you hand your notes or who you talk to, has all your Roundup Bible in it. Dave O'Neill was a note taker like hell won't have it, handed me 2 3-ring binders of Roundup presidency. There's not a fucking thing in there that says, what do you do when Pendleton Roundup doesn't happen?
No shit. Yeah, that was probably not on anybody's mind at any point in
there
time.
There is 0 things. What do you do when you cancel Pendleton Roundup?
So you're going to have a whole separate binder just about that, aren't you? Yeah.
Oh, Jesus. You bet you. So, it's one of those things. Pardon my French on that deal, but that was one of those things you're just looking through going,
I don't see it. Right. It's not in here.
It's not in here. And you're calling everybody okay, who the hell am I going to call? Adolf Hitler? That was the last time Pendleton Roundup was canceled.
That's what I thought, yeah.
Yeah. It's like I call the military and say, hey, what do you do when Pendleton Roundup's canceled in 42 and 43? Sorry, buddy, we can't help you.
Yeah.
Send in planes. That's all I can tell you.
Nobody here knows either, kid. Like, son of a bitch. Oh, my God. Oh, that's I've been so proud of it because I'm fortunate. I'm getting to that age where most of my friends I know are on the Roundup board now because we all went through college together. And so it's been so cool to see all you guys come together and battle through this as a team. And I know you're probably all better off for it, even though you probably took a few years of your life off getting through this shit. But it's good to see that that group of people that's on there working through it. I just couldn't be prouder of all my friends on there.
I appreciate that. One of the things, 8 years is a long time, but from my standpoint, and this is probably a little bit of ego on it, but if you can start off your stint as being a director and finish it up with LeterBuck Cares and doing something for your community, you couldn't seal the deal or put the icing on the cake any better than returning back to your community. That makes you feel like your last 7 or 8 years hasn't been done nothing for you. It's been done everything for the community.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that's going to be around. How do you think that's going to continue on, LeterBuck Cares? Do you think it'll be there in some form as we move forward?
So we're going to keep it in perpetuity in some form. We're not going to keep any money in there. So December 31 is our deadline on funds going out and funds coming in. But we want to keep the LeterBuck Cares fund going, because you have to if you stretch out the calendar just a little bit, you have to realize Pendleton had a flood in February.
Yeah.
They had COVID-19 in March, another flood in April, and then no Pendleton Roundup. Pendleton Community Direct has been dealt a brutal blow from finances and floods and all this kind of stuff to help out our community. But we're resilient people, and we're going to keep fighting through this. Yeah. That flood went all the way through Hermiston and Stanfield and all that country. So the resiliency of Umatilla County is beyond impressive in my mind. And so, yeah, so to answer your question, yes, we're going to keep LeterBuck Cares fund, because what says next year we don't have a fire or something else that comes along that we can have people help us help them.
Outstanding. That's great to hear too. And for you, that's got to be something cool to know too. That's going to keep carrying on, and you can help guide it. Yep. That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Outstanding. Wow. Jesus, we started talking about doing this. We said, I'm like, it'll be 30, 45 minutes probably. We're pushing up an hour and a half right now, and sort of how our conversations go, it seems like it's been about 15 minutes. I can't thank you enough for squealing away some time for us, for being so open about all the craziness that's gone on this year. And it's been great just to talk about college a little bit, and the buddies and the friends. And I can't thank you enough for taking some time to spend with us.
Well, you bet. Anytime. I'm hoping to do it again.
Yeah, I think we'll try to get you on the group one also, the full reacher, as I call it, just because some good stories to be had there for sure. We didn't touch on powwow or anything like that. Probably for a reason. Yeah, and so we've actually thought about having a powwow specific episode. So I think that would be fun. But we'll definitely get you on the full Monty also, so you can just interact with
you bet. Be glad to do it. Be glad to do it, because I'm an open book on as much as I can on Roundup life, farming, ranching, whatever it is. It's just been it's been fun to talk to you. I appreciate your time. I didn't realize that much time had gone by, but I'm a proud business owner with my brother, and that's one of the things, being a 5th generation partner with my brother and family farm. And then going back to 2 years ago, I guess just a little bit to get in depth, I was a 4-H leader. My brother and I had a 4-H archery and shotgun club that we shot out here at the ranch.
Oh, awesome.
Roundup board member. My kids were in 4-H. I mean, and just our plate was full, and I was just like, I was chairman of the Association Rodeo Committee, which is the liaison between committees and the PRCA of 633 rodeos. And so I was like, man, my plate's getting full, but I could take it all in, because the only reason I could take it all in, but probably couldn't give it all out of what I needed to. And that's what I appreciated about it, was I wanted it all, but I couldn't. I'm 100% person 100% of the time. Always you got to give 100%. Always have been. And so I remember always somebody always telling me, can you keep up with Randy? That was always a running joke around here when we were farming. If you can keep up with Randy, we're doing good. Right. If you can keep up, you keep up. I've got some hiccups, but keep up. So that was one of the things. So finally I just had to say, I've got to delineate what's my passion right now and what I need to focus on. So I stuck with Pendleton Roundup and my family, and I got rid of the ARC chairmanship. I'm still on the board, and we're not the 4-H club leaders anymore. But besides that, I'm still a passionate supporter of 4-H, FFA, and the youth, and we'll do anything for them. But I'm probably going to step back into it here in a couple of years when Roundup's in my rearview mirror.
Yeah.
Just my passion. But right now, I'm glad I got rid of it. So on the farm side, we're building a new shop, putting in 18 circles, and the cancellation of Roundup. I can tell you, the cancellation of Roundup, the bright side is it came at a pretty good time because I got a lot of shit going on.
You got a lot of stuff going on as it is. And, I think anybody it's always difficult sometimes to work with family too. And so I've always been pretty proud of you and Paul, how well you work together. I think you got your places that you like to play best and you're really, really good at. I think that certainly helps. But it's just cool to see you guys kicking ass too. And just rocking around. When I first met you guys, I was like, who are these maniacs? Because just the way you guys both looked at problems or looked at opportunities or solutions completely changed how I looked at things and thought about it too. It was like so refreshing for me. So, just as a personal note for both you guys, just always enjoyed how you tackle problems and just your attitude overall is just like, we're just going to get it done, and that's been since day one. And that it's good to see that hasn't changed and it's only gotten better. Yeah,
it's gotten better. Paul's 14 months my junior, but he's one of my idols, extremely organized, great with financials, keeps this rocket ship going. But there's got to be, that I take a lot of pride in, got to be somebody that when he says, all right, jump, I need to make sure the team says how high, and I got to set that benchmark. And so, but we have weekly meetings, Monday morning at 7 a.m. Whole staff gets together, all of our employees, my brother and I, and then Friday mornings, Paul and I get together and make sure that we have our job descriptions and we're still working on that. And so there's been a camaraderie, but Paul and I are still, the great part about it is that sets us above, and this is again a little bit of ego trip, but sets us above some of the other family farms is Paul and I work together very good, but we're still best friends.
Yeah.
So Saturday Roundup, short round Saturday, another side story, it's going to take another few minutes.
I love it.
Saturday Roundup, so Friday we did check presentations. Saturday Roundup, my wife and I were kind of thinking about, you know what, let's do something fun for Pendleton Roundup week. We didn't have it. All right. So I got a great idea. I'm going to take my pickup. I'm going to take our 40-inch flat screen TV out of the front room. I'm going to plug my phone into it with Wrangler Network that shows the short round of Pendleton Roundup last year. And I pulled up right in front of the president's box in the South Grandstand, set the TV on the back of my flatbed pickup, got a cooler of beer, bottle of Pendleton whiskey. We baked a bunch of potatoes because that's one of the things that we like to eat at the Pendleton Roundup is baked potatoes and walking tacos.
Yeah.
The Doritos dip bag, and set the TV there and invited half a dozen of my friends, my brother and my sister-in-law, invited them, said, you guys come, we're going to sit in the president's box and we're going to watch the short round of last year's Pendleton Roundup with nobody else here. And we sat there probably 15 or 20 of us there.
Yeah.
Drank some beer, drank some whiskey, ate some good food. The funny part about it was Pendleton Roundup is generally a 4.5-hour rodeo. Every damn one of them watched the rodeo last year that was there. They watched from tip to tail this year and could not get out of their seat except to walk in and go to the bathroom. It didn't matter if it was the steer roping or the Indian dance or the bull riding. They sat there and watched the whole thing last year and just talked about it.
Even the barrel racing?
The barrel racing and everything.
Son of a bitch, yeah.
That's when we went and got the beer.
Yeah. We got traditions.
Still,
yeah.
Yep. But still, to have somebody that watched the whole event last year, replayed it in their memory all year long, or at least for a couple months, and then sat there the whole time and stood at that TV for 4.5 hours, I said, you bet. We're still going to have Pendleton Roundup in 2021, whether we're watching last year's rodeo or 2020. We're still going to watch it.
That's outstanding.
It was an awesome experience.
I love it. Ingenuity.
So,
yeah.
Yep.
Ingenuity. Getting her done.
So
awesome. Well, my good sir, I think we'll close with that great story. We'll definitely get you on the full reach coming up here soon as well. I think the boys would really have a good time, as would I and you. So we'll get that dialed in. But yeah, we'll get this up and running. And I just can't thank you enough for all your time and candid answers. And, yeah. So
love the podcast. It's been, the time that I do have. That's one thing that I do have on replay on my pickup is whether I'm sitting in there having a meeting or whatever it is, I got it playing. So I love the ag reach to it, and it's been phenomenal.
Hey, we really appreciate that too. That means a tremendous amount. It's something we just love to do, and glad you can be part of it for sure. Yeah. Yeah,
the candid conversation of it is the cool part. There's some of those podcasts that are so guided, that have a story or a way to it. And listen to your guys' podcast with Raleigh and the rest of those guys. It's true to life. It's something you can relate to. It doesn't matter if you're from Seattle or from Albuquerque or from Sand Hills in Nebraska. You can relate.
Way to work that in. Art would be proud of that work in. That was top drawer, man. Top drawer. Yeah. No, that was like, that's what we wanted to do, was just guys talking or people just talking. And sometimes we agree, sometimes we don't, sometimes we go off on a wild tangent. That's what it's all about. Yeah. Yeah,
100%. 100%.
So yeah, we'll try to keep it running. If you got suggestions for topics, feel free to write in. We'll we keep trying to push the love line. Nobody's asked for advice yet for some damn reason. So we'll see. Apparently we have a much smarter audience than I anticipated. Yeah. So
well, I look forward to it, and I appreciate your time as well, Mike, and thanks for reaching out to me.
Randy, appreciate it much. Talk to you soon, man.
All right. LeterBuck.
Thanks. LeterBuck.